religion isn't exactly the easiest topic to write about, especially not in an animated show. This is because on one hand, you might have people who are watching that are incredibly religious and use their faith to justify all of their actions, and on the other hand, there are people who don't see value in any kind of organized religion and just view it as completely meaningless. But somehow, Long Story Short portrays the concept of religion in such a nuanced, realistic manner, showing how following a faith can be stressful or even scary at times, but also beautiful and uniting. Of course, I'll have to talk about the show to dive into this topic, so spoilers ahead for Long Story Short, and with that, let's talk about how this show writes faith. And I think a big chunk of why Long Story Short is so good at portraying religion, specifically Judaism, is because it writes it with layers. See, religion isn't a monolith. In the age of social media and clickbaity headlines, this is a truth that often gets lost when discussing matters of belief. The truth about religions, particularly the major ones, is that within a single religion, there may be different branches, sects, or religious orders that vary in their practices and understandings of their faith and traditions. But this is a truth that gets lost when writing for general audiences. After all, you don't know who's watching, so why not dumb down your portrayal of religion and its followers in the easiest way possible so that everybody gets it? And that's how you end up with, quite frankly, flanderized portrayals of faith in media, where characters are just caricatures of their religion instead of nuanced and realistic portrayals, otherwise known as stereotypes. But Long Story Short is different because the show portrays how Judaism is more than just abstaining from pork and shrimp, having a bar or bat mitzvah as a teenager, and not celebrating Christmas. The show goes out of its way to show different kinds of Jews, and that while most of the characters follow the same religion in Judaism, there are differences worth noting, showing how diverse a religion can truly be. And a big part of that diversity is showcasing the differences between characters and their respective relationships with the religion. Some reject the faith, others find comfort in their belief, and there are even some that just wish they could experience it for themselves. Everybody on the show has a different personal relationship with Judaism, and I think that's beautiful because it shows how faith can be fickle. Not everyone is going to have the same relationship with their religion, and that's completely okay. And I'd like to dive deeper into this point by starting with Naomi. Some people find a lot of purpose in their religion, but sometimes they can take it a step too far. In these cases, their faith then becomes their entire personality, and they force their way of practicing it down other people's throats, heralding it as the perfect or only way to practice. Naomi embodies this kind of zealotry perfectly. She holds her faith close to her heart, and she wants nothing but to share it with her children. But her being a narcissist, it's something that she forces onto her children rather than allowing them to foster a natural and personal connection with their faith. It's certainly one of the ways to practice religion, but Naomi believes that she's cracked the code and that her interpretation is perfect. Thus, if other people and even her own children don't follow her particular set of beliefs, in her eyes, they're just doing it wrong. But what she doesn't understand is that there's no such thing as a perfect way to follow a faith. While there are certainly wrong ways, there's no real correct way to practice religion. But in her defense, given the show's timelines, she very likely had family members live during World War II. A time that was incredibly traumatic, and that's definitely an understatement, for a lot of Jewish people. Thus, she must have reacted by loving her faith, maybe a bit too much, but that's understandable. Because remember, her people were literally being massacred for having their beliefs. But that doesn't change the fact that zealotry is faith at its ugliest, and while religion is shoved down your throat like this, somebody's inevitably going to find it suffocating. And that somebody was her own son, Avi. Religious trauma is a real phenomenon. It's what happens when someone, typically from a young age, has a negative experience resulting from their involvement with a particular religion. It's a lot more common than you might think. It happens to kids who grew up in Christian households but were beaten and abused by their own parents. It happens when closeted gay students who went to Catholic school were taught that their very existence is an affront to God. And for Avi Schwooper, it's what happens when you have an overbearing Jewish mother who forces her beliefs onto you, and if you even try to talk back and defend yourself, you're met with verbal and emotional abuse. And as a result, Avi responds how you would expect a traumatized person to respond. Upon reaching adulthood, he rejects the religion that he and his siblings siblings were raised under, and we can see the effects of this in his personal life. For example, part of what likely attracted him to Jen was that she wasn't Jewish, showing that there's a life outside of the suffocation that he endured while he was still very religious. And this overt rejection of Judaism goes even further because he raised Hannah, his own daughter, specifically to not have the same religious trauma that he endured. It's just unfortunate that he ended up giving her a completely different kind of trauma. Unlike her father, Hannah was raised without an overbearing religious parent figure. Instead, she got the exact opposite, a father who wanted to keep her away from Judaism so she could experience a youth free of the things that traumatized him. We, the audience, understand that it comes from a place of love. Avi wants to protect Hannah from all the bad things that he experienced, so he actively steered his daughter away from Judaism. But the issue is that Judaism isn't just any kind of religion. Being Jewish is an ethno-religion, one bound not just by belief, but by lineage, culture, and bloodlines. By distancing Hannah from Judaism, Avi isn't just keeping her from her religious practice, he's cutting her off from a key part of her heritage. What he views as protection, we, the audience, recognize as erasure. And the result is Hannah as we know her in season 1. She's a loner, unable to relate to her peers and find a place in the world because she just doesn't know who she really is. She's Jewish by blood, but to people that practice Judaism, she's a goy. She's simultaneously too Jewish and not Jewish enough because she wasn't raised Jewish. She didn't have a lot of those shared experiences that a lot of Jewish people had. The rituals, the practices, the rules, the songs are all things that she never got to have her own opinion of simply because she never got to experience them. And it's unfortunate for her because there is beauty in religion, especially if following one is a matter of personal choice. And I think this is best showcased through another character, Kendra. One of the most beautiful parts of following a religion is the community aspect. It's powerful knowing that people from so many different walks of life are united in a single belief. Solidarity with others, knowing that you're not alone, is one of the most empowering feelings that a person can experience. And for a lot of people, they find this feeling through religion. And that's how Kendra, a black woman, found herself converting to Judaism. Before she met Shira, Kendra was a workaholic, obsessed with climbing the corporate ladder at BJ Banana Fingers and becoming successful just like her father. And while she was able to find that success, it definitely didn't come easy. In episode 7, we saw how the job she worked so hard at was killing her, both physically because she had a stress-induced heart attack and mentally causing her to experience great emotional distress when she had to make some morally questionable decisions. And as fate would have it, she found herself in a synagogue on the holiest day of the year in Judaism, Yom Kippur. And this is when we get arguably the best scene in the entire goddamn show. But I also want to clear something up about it. Kendra didn't find redemption by going to a shul and singing some songs. Instead, she found solidarity, a sense of comfort knowing that she's not the first person in the world to sin and likely won't be the last. Kendra felt horrible for what she had done, and while she managed to secure a higher position, her co-workers, the only people in her life that she had at that point, would end up hating her. But through her experience at the shul, she felt solidarity in knowing that she's not the only person in the world to have made an immoral choice. Being part of a religion means to be part of a people. It means to have those shared experiences, the holidays, the songs, the stories told around tables that stretch across generations. For Kendra, the realization was life-changing. For the first time, she wasn't striving, competing, performing, or proving her worth. She was simply there. One person among many, standing shoulder to shoulder in reflection. And this is such a beautiful way of illustrating that religion is community. Bar and bat mitzvahs aren't just customs. They're also times for friends and families to gather, catch up, and celebrate. And in a lot of ways, this mirrors another character too. Yoshi. Like I said in my previous video, Yoshi is a character that, for the most part, lacked a clear identity. He was balancing jobs, never knowing where life would take him, and for the most part, didn't really have a clear direction in life. Remember that canonically, Yoshi has ADHD, and some people with ADHD thrive in structure, following a routine, setting and maintaining schedules, and thinking inside the box are things that some people definitely just can't stand, but Yoshi happens to be the opposite. And thus, he found the structure that his life was lacking in orthodoxy. Initially, this was a decision that his family was shocked by. His siblings, and especially his mother, didn't like the idea of orthodoxy because they found it weird and overly strict. However, Yoshi found structure and identity within it. By becoming an Orthodox Jew, Yoshi found the discipline that he had been lacking and the devotion that he had been seeking. And as a result, he'd become a much happier man as he matured, knowing who he was and what he was capable of. And it's ironic because through all the rules and structure of Orthodox Judaism, Yoshi found freedom. And if that doesn't make sense to you, that's religion for you. What makes the show so special is that it refuses to paint religion in black and white. It doesn't reduce faith to either blind devotion or total rejection. It lives in the messy human middle. Through characters like Naomi, Avi, Hana, Kendra, and Yoshi, the show explores the many ways religion can shape a person, as a source of trauma, as a foundation for healing, as a way to belong, or as a structure for meaning. Long story short, understands that religion isn't just about following God or a higher being. It's about people. It's about how we make sense of pain, how we find one another in the dark, and how we choose to keep believing in something, whether that's faith, family, or the possibility of becoming better. And the beauty of how Long Story Short writes faith is that it doesn't tell us what to believe. It just asks us to understand, to see that faith, like the people who hold it, is layered, complicated, and when done right, profoundly human.